Tonight, after the sun disappears, you will probably do something that would look almost supernatural to nearly every human who ever lived. You will touch a switch, and instantly the darkness will vanish, the walls will appear, the floor will appear, your hands, your phone, your food, your bed, your whole little world will come back into view, and you will not think about it for even 1 second. But for almost all of human history, that moment never happened. When the sun went down, the world did not become dim. It disappeared. The trees became black shapes. The ground became dangerous. The faces of the people beside you faded into shadow. Beyond the small reach of firelight, there was nothing but darkness, cold air, animal sounds, and the sky. And this is the part most people never realize. Modern humans are not really used to night. We are used to light. For hundreds of thousands of years, every person in your family line lived through nights that were far darker than anything most people experience today. No streetlights, no glowing windows, no lamps, no screens, no refrigerator light at midnight. For most of that time, there were not even candles. There was only the moon, the stars, and whatever flame your group could keep alive. So the strange question is this: what did humans actually do with half of their lives? Because if you imagine the past as people simply going to sleep when the sun went down, you are missing the real story. The night was not empty. The night was one of the most important places in human history. And to understand why, we have to begin with the one thing that changed everything: fire. The first strong evidence that ancient humans were using fire comes from places like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, around 1 million years ago. Scientists still debate exactly when fire became common, but one thing is clear. Once humans learned how to live beside fire, the night changed forever. Before that, our ancestors were trapped by sunset in the same way most animals still are. When light disappeared, you did not wander around. You did not explore. You did not go looking for food unless you had no choice. You hid. You climbed. You curled into a safe place. You stayed quiet and waited for morning. Because the night did not belong to us. It belonged to everything that could see better than we could. Big cats, hyenas, wolves, snakes. Things with ears, noses, and eyes built for darkness. A human alone at night was slow, blind, and soft. But fire created something new, not complete safety, a circle of possibility. Around a campfire, the world was still dangerous, but it was no longer completely closed. The flames made heat. They made light. They made smoke. They pushed away insects. They made predators hesitate. For the first time, humans could gather after sunset and stay awake without being helpless. That sounds simple, but it may have changed the direction of our species, because fire did not only protect the body, it extended the day. Before controlled fire, useful time ended with the sun. After fire, humans suddenly had extra hours that no other primate had in the same way. 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe more. And over one night, that does not sound like much. But stretched across thousands of generations, those extra hours became enormous. They became time for watching, time for repairing tools, time for teaching children, time for remembering where the animals moved, time for planning tomorrow's hunt, and most importantly, time for talking. This is where the night becomes something more than survival. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner published research on firelight conversations among the Honsi people of the Kalahari. What she found was almost like looking through a small window into deep human history. During the day, conversations were mostly practical. Where to find food? Who was going where? Which resources mattered? What needed to be done? Daylight talk was about the immediate world, but at night, around the fire, the conversation changed. People told stories. They spoke about distant relatives, old events, spirits, myths, arguments from the past, funny moments, dangerous animals, people who were not there. The fire did something strange to the human mind. It made the present feel less urgent. In daylight, your attention is pulled by work, hunger, movement, tasks, decisions. But in firelight, the body is still, the eyes are fixed, and the surrounding darkness creates a wall around the group. Suddenly, imagination has room. A person can describe a place nobody in the circle can see. A hunter can become a hero. A dead ancestor can become part of the conversation. A child can hear a story and remember it for life. This may be one of the oldest forms of human culture, Before books, before temples, before schools, before theaters, there was a small group sitting inside a ring of orange light, listening to someone speak. The campfire was not just a heater. It was the first screen, the first classroom, the first stage, the first memory machine, and it taught humans one of our most powerful abilities, to live inside stories. But that was only one part of the night, because when the fire burned low and the talking stopped, humans did something else that might sound very strange today. They slept differently. Most people today think there is only one correct way to sleep. You get into bed, you fall asleep, you stay asleep for 7 or 8 hours, then you wake up. And if you wake in the middle of the night, you call it a problem. But for much of history, that was not how sleep worked. Historian Roger Ekirch spent years studying old documents, diaries, legal records, medical books, letters, religious texts, and literature. Again and again, he found references to something called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed not long after darkness arrived. They would sleep for several hours. Then they would wake up naturally in the middle of the night, not in panic, not because something was wrong. They were simply awake. After an hour or two, they would sleep again until morning. This pattern appears in many records from before modern artificial lighting became normal. It was so ordinary that people did not usually explain it. They mentioned first sleep and second sleep the way we mention breakfast and dinner. Everyone understood. The interesting part is what people did during that quiet space between the two sleeps. Some prayed, some talked, some had sex, some visited neighbors. Some thought about dreams while they were still fresh. Some simply stayed in bed and let their minds wander in the dark. Medical writers even suggested that this middle night period could be useful for study, reflection, or intimacy, because the body was rested but the world was silent. To us, waking at 2 a.m. often feels like failure. To them, it may have felt normal, and then science found something even stranger. In the 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Weir carried out experiments in which volunteers spent long winter-like nights without artificial light. After some time, their sleep began to separate into 2 blocks. First, they slept. Then came a calm, waking period. Then they slept again. Their bodies seemed to rediscover a rhythm that modern life had hidden. And during that quiet wakefulness, researchers noticed something remarkable. People were not simply awake in the usual daytime sense. They often described a peaceful, reflective state, somewhere between sleep and ordinary awareness, a kind of natural meditation. Imagine that. For thousands of years, humans may have had a built-in nightly period for thought, not scrolling, not working, not panicking, just lying awake in darkness between dreams and morning, with nothing to do except listen, remember, imagine, and think. And then we removed it, not all at once, slowly. First, towns began fighting the darkness with public lamps. Paris became famous for lighting its streets under Louis XIV. Other cities followed. Night became less dangerous, at least in the places where lamps burned. Then candles became easier to obtain. Then oil lamps improved. Then gaslight spread through cities. Then electric light arrived, and the entire ancient rhythm of night began to collapse. The change was not just technological, it was psychological. For most of history, night had rules. In many towns, people were expected to be indoors after dark. Moving around at night without a reason could make you suspicious. A person outside in darkness might be a thief, a drunk, a wanderer, or something worse. Even the word curfew comes from the old idea of covering the fire. At night, communities controlled flame because an unattended fire could destroy a whole town. Darkness was not romantic. It was serious. It was dangerous. It was respected. But modern people did not simply make better lamps. We changed the meaning of night. We turned it into more day. Factories could run longer. Shops could stay open. Streets could fill with people. Homes could glow for hours after sunset. And eventually, every bedroom became a tiny sunrise. Televisions, phones, laptops, LED bulbs, notifications, blue light at midnight. The human brain did not evolve inside this world. Inside your skull is a clock much older than electricity. It listens to light. When bright light reaches your eyes in the evening, your brain receives a message that sounds like daytime. So, it delays the chemistry of night. Melatonin, the hormone that helps regulate sleep timing, is pushed back. Your body becomes confused. The evening stretches. Sleep shifts later. The border between day and night becomes blurry. And the strangest part is how quickly the old pattern can begin to return. Studies on people camping without artificial light have found that their internal clocks can shift closer to the natural light-dark cycle in only days. Sunset starts to matter again. Morning light becomes stronger. The body begins listening to the sky. It is as if the older rhythm is still there, waiting, buried under lamps, buried under screens, buried under habits we call normal. And this raises a disturbing possibility. Maybe some of what we call insomnia is not always the body breaking. Maybe sometimes waking in the night is the body remembering. Of course, modern sleep problems are real. Stress, illness, anxiety, work schedules, and noise can damage sleep badly. But the older story tells us something important. A human waking in the dark is not automatically unnatural. For a very long time, that may have been part of the rhythm. First sleep, quiet waking. Second sleep, a night with a middle. Not an empty gap, but a space. A space where the mind could soften. A space where dreams could be remembered. A space where stories could settle. A space where people could think without the pressure of daylight. And maybe that is what we truly lost. Not just darkness, not just stars, not just sleep. We lost a kind of silence that human beings were built around. For most of our existence, the Milky Way was not a special sight. It was not something you drove far away from the city to see. It was simply above you, every night. The fire was not decoration, it was survival. Stories were not entertainment, they were memory. And darkness was not nothing, it was half of life. Your ancestors lived inside that darkness. They feared it, they respected it, they used it. They filled it with flame, voices, dreams, and thought. Then, in a tiny fraction of history, we covered the world in artificial light and forgot that anything had changed. Tonight, when you turn on a lamp, the room will appear instantly. And that is a miracle. But it also hides something. Because somewhere behind that light switch is an older human night. A night of fire. A night of stories. A night split into two sleeps. A night where people woke in the dark and listened to their own minds. We did not just brighten the night, we erased an ancient part of being human. And most of us never noticed it disappearing.